because Musim changed his camera around, it looks like you're at the kids' table at Thanksgiving, and Moon is at the adults' table.
Oh, well, my bad.
No, that's okay. I just looked over. There you go.
I fixed it.
I just looked over on the Skype because I have the top of it cut off, and it was very much like.
Skype makes this really hard now. Like for me to see my camera. Does that?
Oh yeah.
That doesn't really do anything. Okay.
That's all right.
I got it on an odd like the monitor I have this on top of has like a very, very little thin frame around it, so it's kind of odd to position on this. But
right. Okay. Let's close all that stuff. Oh, hey, laundry is done. As soon as we start recording.
That's usually the way it goes. Thank you for the reminder, though. I need to go take my shit out the dryer. Not right now, obviously.
No, yeah.
I know it looks like I was standing up, but I wasn't.
I gotta go. Oh, man. Alright. Are you guys ready to kick this thing off?
Yes.
Yes.
I asked you that, and I'm not. Damn it. I forgot to bring up my notes.
It's usually the way it goes.
Real quick, waiting for iCloud to open. There we go. Alright, let's get started here in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of TVGP's Game Club. This time, episode 55 for Ori and the Blind Forest. I'm your host, Boston. Joining me as always is Moonpeer.
Hello, Governor.
And Musim.
Hey.
Like we talk about every time, I sort of always want to put this warning in, but it probably doesn't matter that much in this game, as we're going to be talking about some spoilers. So,
hashtag spoilers.
Yeah, there's going to be some stuff, but I'm not sure how much it matters overall, I guess. Let's just dive right into about the game. It came out March 11th, 2015, published by Microsoft Studios, developed by Moon Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Platforms are PC and Xbox One. Time travel, Metacritic 88, OpenCritic 89. That seemed about right. Appears for release date, not a whole lot. Hotline Miami 2. Final Fantasy Type 0 HD. And Borderlands The Handsome Collection.
All games I always meant to play and never did.
Yeah.
Same? Well, Final Fantasy the exception.
Yeah, that's a weird game.
That's on you guys. That one. That's nothing. That's not me. That's all you two.
I'm recusing myself. As we always ask every month, top of the pile, middle of the pack, or overlooked?
Come on. We all know this is top of the pile.
Yep.
We all know this is top of the pile.
It got really good critical reception, I think, when it came out.
Yeah, and I feel like, unlike some of these games, you look at something like Owlboy, where that had a very strong critical and fan reception, and then kind of it burnt off very quickly. I feel like people still talk about Ori, where it's like, hey, what roguelite should I play? All right, Symphony of the Night, Ori, something, something, something.
Axiom Verge.
Yeah, Axiom Verge. All great games we have all played on this very show.
Yes.
So, let's talk about the game itself. What we liked, what we didn't like. Who wants to go? I already played this, so who wants to? Moonpeer wants to go first, raising his hand.
I'll start. I'll start. So, I've been playing this game in very, very small chunks, like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
No matter how many times I launch this game, that music, that little song piece when you load the game that is the Ori theme is one of my favorite pieces of music of all time. I know we have the music expert in the show.
Hello.
So, not you.
Oh, I'm the video game music expert. No, Musim is a actual musician.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The music on the game's gorgeous. It's I meant to look it up before this cast and I didn't, and I may be poking around on the internet just to see while we're doing this, but like you don't think of a lot of like indie level games having an orchestrated score to it like this game does.
Right.
And you also don't think of too many games that get orchestrated scores having ones that sound as unique and meaningful as this one. Like usually you get like this really generic thing because it's made for the masses and kind of an afterthought maybe at the end of the game, or at least that's what it feels like to me in a lot of like AAA development where that stuff shows up.
Right.
But like I think this soundtrack is freaking awesome. I think they did a great job at giving you that fairy tale thing and making you feel incredibly sad along with the scenes you're seeing.
Yeah.
And,
well, I think to that specifically, it doesn't... I feel like sometimes if you have a game that has an orchestrated soundtrack, let's talk about a recent example like Ni no Kuni 2, it feels overwhelming and a little overpowering and sort of like, well, here's the sad scene. It's this big, like, bombastic, sad theme. I like that Ori, a lot of times, it's just one or two instruments and maybe a little bit of light vocalization, and that's all it really needs, and I think that's really great. I just looked up the composer Gareth Coker. It's really all he's done. He's done a little bit of Minecraft stuff and like Ark Survival Evolved, but that's pretty much the only major thing he's done. So that's even more impressive.
Yeah, and I like on the music. I just love the fact that it's the same. Like that when you load the game, it's the singular theme is what you hear as it does the title screen. That theme is present throughout every single piece of music in the game. Yep. It changes the tempo, the pitch, the instrument it gets played on changes depending on what situation you're in. And somehow they've made one theme really, really happy, really, really sad, really, really terrifying.
Right.
Like they've taken that theme and just passed it through every single part of this game, and it makes such a huge difference. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that's like one of my favorite like little small snippets of music that I've probably ever heard. Like, it's so great.
Yeah. And I think it's a really great compliment to how beautiful the game's graphics itself are. One of those few games where I'm sort of like, I technically understand how they make games, but you look at something like this, it's like, but how did you make this one? Like, how did you get all this great stuff into this game and make it look so fluid, almost like painted? And it's technically very impressive.
It kind of reminds me of like the skill level of Dust and Elysian Tale, and that you're like, how did an indie developer manage to put this much detail into this game?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, especially with Dust, where that was just one person over years, and my understanding is Moon Studios is not much bigger.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and it's crazy to me looking at Gareth Coker's website, like the soundtrack guy, and that he's very obviously in a large studio with a big orchestra in it, and it's like,
how'd you get there?
How did A and B go together? How is this guy already not making more money than Moon Studios could afford? And like, I don't know. I bet there's a interesting story there. And you know, maybe it's just that he was a guy at a college, and he got a college band to perform it for him after he wrote it, which would give him access to all that stuff, but I don't know.
Well, I think what's really interesting is, I'm just going to keep talking about the soundtrack for probably the next hour. I think what's really interesting is if you compare Gareth Coker's soundtrack for Ori and the Blind Forest with Lena Raine's soundtrack for Celeste, I feel like both of those soundtracks very, very closely complement the games that they're in, and if you were to switch those around, if Celeste had this, subtle orchestrated score, I don't feel like it would work as well. And if Ori had more of an electronic semi-chiptune soundtrack, I feel like that wouldn't work as well. So we've been playing all these games that have graphics and story and music. All of this stuff are so well intertwined that it really elevates the whole thing.
Well, and also to that point, like, it's kind of interesting too, because you could technically argue that both games take place within nature, right?
Oh, sure.
In Celeste, you're going up a mountain, and in this one, you're in a forest. But like I see the reasoning on both ends. Like Celeste is more than just a game about a girl going up a mountain. It's a homage to these old gameplay styles and this old 8-bit Nintendo thing. So you kind of want to mix some of that in there, and you have them also using phones, you know, for Instagram photos or whatever they called it in the game. And here, like it's just pure earth, pure forest. So you really want those acoustic and air sounds and.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Like I very much see the association with it. Like I don't. Not that anyone is going to come up to me and say, "Hey, do you want to make this gorgeous game soundtrack thing?" Like for something like Ori, I don't know that I would have, like I would not have access to an orchestra. So like,
like it wouldn't be the right fit for you as a musician.
Yeah, like I might be able to do something with guitars and the cello and maybe some chime sounds on the synthesizers, but you know, there's a limitation there that I don't have access to. But it's really cool, and you know, both those composers are classically trained musicians. You know, like they're both hardcore. Like Lena Raine, I think is her name.
Yeah,
she comes from a musical family. I think her dad's I don't know what type of musician, but. I know she was kind of born into that. Coker, I don't know anything about, obviously, but
not yet. But I feel like one of the best uses of the music early on is that sort of Pixar's Up style intro.
Yep, I was gonna say we're gonna have to talk about this at some point, aren't we?
Yeah, and I feel like if you would have hired someone like. I desperately love his work, but like you can't put Hans Zimmer in that intro because it's like this very big soundtrack. But you know, Coker, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his last name right. Apologies if I'm not. It's this very subtle, very soft soundtrack, and I feel like that very quickly shows you how well it complements the game, because that intro is such a bummer and such a gut punch, even without there's like 15 words at most and no voiceover, and it just in the first 5 minutes it manages to just punch your heart out.
Yep. And then it does it again and again and again and again.
Everything you see will die.
I mean, okay, let's talk about the story before we go into too much into the gameplay stuff. But they have a villain in this game who is a giant owl who I can't remember the name of now. I think it begins with an S, maybe Sora or something.
Something like that, yeah. So the one character's name I didn't write down.
But the owl is well, number one, it's an incredible villain because it's huge. It takes up the entire screen.
Yeah.
And again, flash into that art style thing of how on earth did you do this?
Yeah.
When you're in the chase sequences with the owl and you can see it approaching from the background, and when it gets close to you and you know it's going to grab you. How they did that, I don't know, but they made this thing terrifying. They made it horrifically scary. And, oh, by the way, the evil villainous owl who's trying to eat you has a backstory that makes it a totally valid villain.
Yep. Yeah, in this game that I feel like it's not enough to continue to state it, is that there's not a ton of story. The little spirit that follows you around will sort of be like, alright, we now open up this new area. Why don't you head over there? Or like, this is what this tree did. But there's not a lot of, you know, there's not an extensive amount of dialogue, but the story they managed to make for that owl, especially for the very ending too, is just sort of like, oh man, okay, you're one of those villains. We're sort of like, yeah, you might have eaten me a whole bunch of times, but you were actually a pretty cool owl.
Yep, and you've got the weird two-legged black ball thing that is a bad guy at the start, then suddenly turns into a good guy.
Yep.
It's the whole, like, every single character in it is, like you said, minimal story, but heartfelt. Every single thing that they do, like, it comes down to the way it looks, the music played at the same time, the very minimal story being told to you. It's like, okay, so the owl's a mother, and it was doing what it did to protect its children, who it didn't succeed in doing so, and it has one left. that's everyone can relate to that. Everyone knows that kind of backstory, that feeling of doing that kind of thing. And then you got the little dude with the two legs who wants to try and protect himself, and then ends up like the scene when you go into basically his home where all of it, the other ones of him are, and they're all frozen.
Yeah.
And he literally walks in and does a little quiet hug to this statue of his kind. They're all frozen.
It's heartbreaking.
Oh, there's another gut punch for me.
Right. Oh, I guess I'm just crying now. All right. I think the thing that I didn't realize before I started researching for this episode was Moon Studios. They listed a whole bunch of inspirations for the game, but one of the biggest ones was Studio Ghibli, and I feel like once I read that, I was like, oh, okay. Like they took
what if No Face was a mom?
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like they internalized a lot of the really great storytelling that has made Ghibli so popular over the years. Is that most of what Ori does so correctly with storytelling is it's just showing you stuff instead of telling you that things happened. Like, it's showing you this horrible scene of, the owl coming back, and you're like, oh, it's actually a mother. Oh no, it's real bad for everything in this forest that's dying. And they didn't need to write anything on the screen like, psst, it's a mom. Like there's, they had a really deft hand at showing everything they needed to. I think that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
In video games especially. Like
Yes.
Like, especially like with the JRPGs I'm used to playing all the time, where they have to repeat the revelation to you 4 times.
We won because of the power of friendship. But I think that leads us probably into talking about the gameplay, which is probably my least favorite part of this game, oddly.
I'm torn. I am 100% torn on this game because I am a Dark Souls fan. I am a kick me in the teeth and I will make 10 minutes progress and view that as a successful day kind of person. That's the type of person I am. And it feels weird to have that level of punishing in a Metroidvania.
Let me tell you about a game called Hollow Knight.
Yes. But the difference, I think, the reason why Ori can get away with it is because you can save anywhere.
Yeah, like you make your own saves, and that's still a really cool system where it's like, you're making saves, very early on you can reuse saves, you're using it to increase your ability points at those. Like, I think, especially halfway through a jumping puzzle, where it's like, okay, I made it there, this part I see above me is really tough, I'm just going to save right here.
Yep. I did not make enough use of that early in the game. I made a lot better use of that feature later in the game.
Yes.
When I realized I was going to get sent back 5 screens after successfully completing a horrifically difficult jumping puzzle.
Yeah. Especially in the, like, fire volcano area. It's like, I am saving all the time.
Yep. Speaking of, the thing, we praised Axiom Verge, quite rightly so, for taking the Metroidvania and tilting it a little bit and making certain features of its own, like the robot bug that you can get, and then that's the ball mode essentially, instead of being just a ball mode. I think the bouncing off people's bullets is number one. It's a D move because then you've got bottomless pits and fire below you at any point in the game.
Yeah.
But it's also very much a game changer because that changed the entire way I looked at the game. From that point onwards, I looked at every single screen differently.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I could just use the bullets to bounce to this area that I didn't realize I could get to, because now I've got the bullet bounce ability and I can just jump off something.
Yeah, now I have a new skill point. Yeah, I think that is still... I think Ori, gameplay-wise, does a lot wrong, but I think when it does things right, it's genuinely inventive stuff. Like you were talking about with Axiom Verge, where it's like, I would have expected to get a double jump, but now I'm like, chaining these almost like you're sort of pulling back a slingshot. You're like slingshotting yourself 15 times across a chasm between these things that dangle and enemies bullets, and it once you get it down, it feels really, really great. And then combining that with the little dash charge move that they have, putting the two of those together, that felt incredible.
Yeah, I played the definitive edition on Xbox One X. I don't know how what else you guys played it on. I'm guessing you some Switch.
No,
that was a joke. That was a joke. How long till Switch joke?
Boy, that game would probably do pretty well on Switch.
You got me steamed. You got me steamed.
Yeah, I want it.
But I mean, this,
which is where I played
it. Best whisper of the year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, number one, I love the Xbox One controller. The abilities and the things that they do, it felt natural after a while to just, as soon as you're jumping, I'm just keeping all the Y every single time I'm hitting the jump button. I'm just keeping all the Y, and then you get the feather, and the feather allows you to glide, and you can double jump as well. So then you're doing a glide, double jump, catapult, glide, double jump, catapult. It's like, okay, nowhere in this game is safe anymore.
Yeah.
Like, nobody can hide your secrets from me except for that thing hidden behind a switch, which I don't know where the switch is to open up the stupid thing.
You're at like 99.8%.
I'm getting close.
Yeah. I think, conversely, I think one of Ori's biggest problems in the gameplay department, it sounds like something they have taken to heart and they're improving with Ori and the Will of the Wisps, coming out next year, I think, is the lack of direct combat. Because I think early on, the Spirit Bolts thing is fine, but I think when you combine the lack of direct combat, so you're always relying on that, or maybe the explosion thing, combining that with a pretty low variety of enemies that stretches through the entirety of the game, I feel like combat gets pretty tiring. You can look at something like Axiom Verge, where you're getting all these new weapons and new abilities, and you're growing your arsenal over the game, or something like Symphony of the Night, where you're getting different types of weapons that change your attack in meaningful ways. And I think that, especially comparatively, and I'm trying so hard not to compare this game to Hollow Knight as I'm playing Hollow Knight at the moment, comparing it to all those games, not having a direct attack, I feel like, makes the combat kind of one note throughout the entire game. I think that hurts it a lot.
In that front as well, it also doesn't help, like, when towards the end of the game there are spikes everywhere. And unless you have collected like every single health and life upgrade and every secret, you're dead in 2 hits.
Yeah.
Pretty much throughout the entirety of the game, if you take 2 hits, you're normally dead. It doesn't help when you're on a single platform, surrounded by spikes, and there's a spider over there, and it fires something at you. You don't want to move towards it because you need to prepare yourself for whatever may be behind the wall that you can't see.
Right.
So your only thing to do is take the hit, because you can't parry, you can't bounce these bullets back, and if you do bounce it back, or bounce it anywhere, what's your options? Send yourself directly down into the ground and bullet up into the air, or send yourself off into any one of these directions where you're probably going to hit spikes.
Yeah, because you have to swap with the bullet, and that's not going to get you anything.
Yeah, it does feel like it could use some work on that, but I love this game like so much. This is seems to be the week for me, or the month for me, of why didn't I play that sooner?
Yeah, and I feel like that Ori being great, and the game to me, and I remember sort of having the same issues the first time I played it. It having these shortcomings, and it having just like it you can see it looking at greatness, but it never quite gets there. That's why I'm so excited when they announced a sequel. It's like, okay, cool. Like, you've been working on it for a while. Like, you can you get another chance to get there, and I'm really excited to see how they're gonna do that.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. I was excited to buy it because when I saw the trailer for the sequel at E3, I was like, okay, good. I've heard that Ori is a great game. I'm glad that this very small studio is getting another chance to evolve on a game which is apparently already great as it is.
Right.
Not to mention, every single time they show any form of video of that game, it just looks beautiful.
Yeah. And the new one will be in 4K, which should be illegal.
Yeah. Bring it on!
Yeah. Wasn't this one of the studios that Microsoft bought?
I think they bought them a long time ago. I don't think it was one of their announcements at E3. I think they partnered with them a long time ago. I can't remember if it's...
Oh, did they publish the first game?
Yes.
They did, yeah. That's why it's not on anything else.
Well, it's on Steam.
Yeah, because Games for Windows Live is dead. I think otherwise Microsoft would have been like, hey, there's one place to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I'm so hyped now about the next game. I was completely indifferent about the sequel, and now it's just like, okay, I'm in. I will try and be in day one. We will see what my schedule allows.
Yeah. Yusum, any final words here for... I think it feels like we're sort of winding down here. Any final words on Ori?
I don't know that I have much more to say about it that we haven't covered. I think it's a fantastic game that's very detailed. It's probably more 2D platformer, I think, is... I'm sure the audience is derived from what we've been talking about, but like I recommend it. I think it's a good way to spend, a dozen hours. I think as long as you like the kind of kid adult fairy tale story, I think it's going to grab you a lot. Like there's a lot of charm in that. So
yeah.
I
think that's actually the perfect word for it, is charm. Like this game is charming from moment one. And then it's like that sleazy charm when it's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to kill you every 5 seconds.
Right. Yeah, you dared to make it to the end. Now it's Spike City.
Yeah, there are sections of that game that really bother me. The 3 escape sequences, while being visually incredible and really fun to play, get real frustrating when you're one jump away from finishing it.
Yep.
You mess something up, and then you're back to the beginning of the chase sequence. That's controller throwing time.
Well, and to make matters worse, on the original version of the game, when you completed those chase sequences, it locked you out of that area. So if you don't get 100% of the items the first time, you're not getting 100% of the game. Sorry. I'm glad they went back and fixed that for the definitive edition, because that's not... That was really frustrating, because it's like, all right, I'm going to go back in. No, okay.
Yeah, I think people seem to have learned over the past couple of years that consumers don't like it when you lock them out of content after doing something.
Yeah.
So, good on them for doing it, but.
Well, and that may have just been we really wanted to have that originally, but we just didn't have the time to add that functionality the first go around.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Now that Ori and the Blind Forest is behind us, let's talk about our next game, chosen by you, the patrons, patreon.com/E1M.
No, it wasn't chosen by me, Boston.
What's up?
It wasn't chosen by me, Boston.
Chosen by everyone that's a patron that isn't on the show. The next game is 2064 Read-Only Memories, the cyberpunk point-and-click adventure game that came out on PC, OS X, Linux, PS4, Vita, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, Android, iOS, and the Ouya. And I left out a whole bunch of platforms. It came to a whole ton of other platforms.
Awesome. So time to crack out the old Ouya.
Yes. Like with a lot of these games, there are a couple of different versions. We're just going to be talking about the core version of the game. I get the impression I'll probably be buying this on Switch. I know that's the integral version, and that has extra side stories and stuff. Not really going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the core game. So that's 2064 Read-Only Memories, which, thank goodness, is not a Metroidvania, which I'm very happy about.
It's not a puzzle platformer.
Yep.
Yay.
Yeah, we're playing something else. All right.
It's not the game I wanted to win, which is also not a puzzle platformer.
I know.
What game did you want to win?
I wanted to be House Musum.
Yes. House Musum. It's a Massachusetts.
Oh,
yeah. We haven't a little behind the scenes peek behind the curtain here. We haven't added any games to the Game Club list in a couple of months here, mostly because we are all very busy. So you know the potential pool of games shrinks and shrinks. So
yep,
any month now we're gonna be playing that.
She's never gonna get it. It's rigged.
I'll just delete it off the list.
That'd be super, super awkward. Like, we get that game, both of you guys just roll with the house that I donated in, and then I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
So next month, in 4 weeks, we'll talk about 2064 read-only memories. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and listening, and we'll see you next month.
Bye-bye.
And thanks for watching the video, everyone. Bye!